All right, we're live. So, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE Presses, and I am here with you on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, along with my editors, and we are here to answer whatever questions you may have. It could be around, I don't know, anything. It could be around publishing, it could be around writing, it could be around the process of writing, it could be around self branding. It could be anything random, like what's my favorite uh, cake. I don't know. I just clearly made that up because it was stupid. But anyway, we are here with you guys to again answer whatever questions you may have. If you are watching this and it is not 5 p.m. Pacific time on a Thursday or 8 p.m. Eastern time on a Thursday, this is not a big deal. All you got to do is pop your questions into the comments section. Myself and my fellow editors, we do check on a regular basis to see if you guys have any questions for us. And then all we do is we go back and we'll answer the questions in the subsequent week. If you're watching it now, fantabulous, because the way we work is that you, again, pop your questions into that comment section. And what we then do is we will respond to them in real time. So, with that, I want to say hi to Caroline and Dawn. Awesome to see you guys. So Dawn's asking, what does my shirt say? This was actually a gift from a dear friend when I turned 50. I have red hair because God knew I needed a warning label, which is honestly, I find pretty hilarious. I am, and that is one question I get sometimes. Am I a natural redhead? Yes, I am, but I also like to play. So anyway, with that, I'm here with Peter. Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Good, Lise. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Did you do a Tough Mudder?
I've done three.
Holy crap, man. You're the
Yeah,
bomb. Check you out. Those are hard.
they are hard. 8 miles, 30 obstacles. But we got a team. We're Team Fireball. So the name we're from 4 to 12 of us.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah, it's a
gosh.
blast.
Dude, I need to do one. That just sounds
Definitely.
like so much fun.
It is. And when you're done, it's just such a sense of accomplishment. It's just really cool.
I've done Spartan races.
Uh huh.
And I remember the first time I did a Spartan race because they do one of the obstacles that is in all of them. It's a pyramid that you have to climb up and then like climb back down.
Yep.
And I looked at it and I was like, I am going to die. But a similar thing. It's a group of us that all went to the same gym, and I still remember I put it out there to my coach at the gym, and I was like, I think I'm gonna do a Spartan race. And he looked at me at the time like I had lost my mind, and he was like, I'll tell you what, because it was only like a month away. He goes, I'll tell you what, not this one, because you need training. I mean, and he was 100% right. But yeah, I need to do it. I need to do a Tough Mudder. That is fabulous.
Cool. Yeah.
Very cool. So I was just going through the normal rundown of how we take questions, and they can ask us whatever they want. Caroline says, "Hey, Peter." So
Hello.
I didn't know. So how was your week? Anybody toss anything interesting at you? Any questions you have that we may want to toss out there?
For me, not
Yeah.
unfortunately, not especially. No, I'm still midway through editing one of my author's novels, and I'm actually a couple days behind. So other than that,
Yeah.
it's been pretty quiet by me.
Oh, okay. Cool. We actually got some amazing news that I did not. It's one of those things that I put us in the hat for something, and I figured, we won't.
I saw a
And
teaser teaser message today. What is it? What's the news?
well, I'm waiting for the final confirmation. But we actually have two panels at LA Comic Con.
All right,
Yeah, so that should be a blast, an absolute blast.
fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I'm just waiting for the I got the notice. Okay, these panels were accepted, and you have to email me back to confirm. And so I did. But the paranoid part of me is like, okay, I'm waiting for him to come back one more time and say, no, this is real. You're actually gonna do. You're
That's
actually gonna
wonderful.
be there. Yeah.
Cool. Is
So.
this just you? Is it Jonathan? Maybe I mean, who's going to be on these panels?
Right now, it's looking like so I'm facilitating one. There are two panels. One's about author branding and like how to build your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, I'm facilitating that one, I believe. And then the other one is around the author's journey. So, how do
Oh,
you get from concept to completion? And I believe that one, I'm on the panel. We have a few of our favorites. So Milazzo, who we actually had printed his novel a while ago, he's
mm-hmm.
on one panel facilitating the other.
Great.
Chris Ryal, who used to be the chief creative officer for IDW Publishing, and is
Oh,
also on our advisory panel. So he is a tentative yes. We also have Tori Eldridge, who wrote Dance Among the Flames, that we published in May of this year and was
mm-hmm.
named one of the most anticipated books by bustle.com, which is great.
Cool.
Who else do we have? Oh, Tasha Hutchison, who we published her novel earlier this year. And so she will be joining us for both panels. And we have a couple of other people that I don't actually remember off the top of my head. This will actually be, Caroline, great question, on December 4th. And I believe it's at the LA Convention Center. So it promises to be a lot of fun. And I think one is at noon and the other's at like 2:30 or something like that. It's a
Oh,
Sunday.
cool.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Great news.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we just need to have some of us to be workshop leaders at something like Bread Loaf, and then we'll hit the full cycle. So, because we've been at local conferences, now we'll have done a Comic Con, we've done major workshops, but we've never, at least now that I can think of, I don't think any of us has spoken at a Bread Loaf or like a Yale Writers Conference, Writers Workshop or anything like that. But that would be fun.
Cool.
Hmm. So, anyway, but yeah, that's the big news on my end. In terms of editing, I've still got two or three books out for with my authors going through and making revisions. Uh, Kind of brainstormed a little bit on some feedback this week. And then I have like four or five that I am tagged to edit next year and also for 2024. I'm sorry, for 2024 and for 2025. So I'm taking this opportunity to knock out some of my own writing as quickly as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I'm looking to pick up a couple titles for next year as well. So, and if I can go 2023 and 2024, it gives me greater, more of a chunk, more books I can edit.
oh, cool. Yeah, definitely. And we actually, so if anybody had submitted a book to us for potential publication, I believe we sent a response to almost everyone. I'm going to look it up because I want to see. I think there's only a handful that we did not respond to, meaning like a final yes or a final no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all the others, I'm pretty sure. Again, as long as it was submitted to us full length piece before October 24th, I want to say. So let me see. I think. And there are some. that we're like kind of in conversations about. So let's see. There are 13 that are still in play.
Still in play, meaning still undecided or still waiting for confirmation?
Yeah, I mean both. So either we responded to them and said, hey, we really like it. And well, actually, no, these are all ones that we accepted in some capacity, and sometimes, and they were like reviewing the contract, or they, um, most of them are reviewing the contract, in all honesty.
Hmm.
And let me see, let's say it's just progress. And then we have 11, so 13 that are accepted, and the authors are reviewing them now, and 11 that we basically are in conversations. So either our acquisition editors are still kind of figuring out if this is a piece that we want to cover,
Right.
or not everyone had an opportunity to check it out yet. So they're taking that opportunity to review it. Celerino Cordoba says, hi, from Tijuana. I am, uh, yeah, hi from Tijuana, basically. So, hey, Celerino, lovely to see you. So, let's see. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's any major topics that we may want to cover that you can. I don't. Have you had any like really interesting questions that have come up in the last however long?
um, like I said, no, but I've been pretty low key
Mm,
lately. So, and me and my author aren't always seeing eye to eye on things. So I think he's a little bit disappointed isn't the right word, but not exactly thrilled, which is something I don't really understand because the work that he's done with this next draft is just incredible. I
yeah.
mean, he's really taken it to another level and filled it in areas that I had some that I mentioned, some that I pointed out, and others that I totally didn't say anything about. He just puts all this color and character and description and place into it. It's just fantastic. I'm like, this is a brand new novel. It's wonderful. So
Wow.
yeah, it's really cool. I'm hoping to get it
Oh.
done. I was hoping to get it done by the end of last month, but my birthday's coming up, so I definitely want to get it done by my birthday.
Oh, awesome. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
What are you going to do anything cool for it?
I don't know. My wife is going to tell me what we're doing on my birthday tomorrow on her birthday.
Oh, awesome. Well, happy birthday.
Thanks.
um, I did have one. This is actually something that comes up relatively frequently for historical fiction. So, believe it or not, contractions were not used in the English language until the 17th century. So, if you're writing a historical fiction piece, excuse me, contractions were actually not used verbally until the early 17th century, and I believe mid to late 17th century in the written language. So if you want your piece to be authentic, then do not use contractions in a historical fiction piece. It really, it absolutely pulls the reader out of the story. So, and clearly it's not, it won't be true to the story itself. Just
Hmm.
as FYI.
Yeah, good point.
Don McIntyre asks, assuming the writing is good, how do you feel about animals as story narrators slash main characters?
You want me to go or you want to go?
You go.
I think it's fine. I mean, Animal Farm comes to mind, obviously, but
Mm,
as if the narrator is either believable or unbelievable, either one, the writer must decide. But if the writing is good and it keeps me engaged and interested in the story, I'm all for the narrator being an animal. It doesn't matter to me what what species it is, as long as the writing's good.
That's a good point. Like I'll be honest, I was just trying to think of what fiction have I read recently where the primary character or the narrator was an animal. But to your point, Animal Farm, yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it's considered a classic. So, I mean, honestly, with any work, to Peter's point, um, if the writing's great, the story is great, it's got a great arc, who cares who or what the narrator is? But it will always come back to those factors, right? When it's not believable, when it doesn't feel authentic, that's really when you as a writer, you need to be aware, and that's typically when you're going to see that it's going to get rejected quite a bit. So,
Right. Can't exactly call attention to the fact that it is an animal. Just assume that the animal is narrating the story and just let
mhm.
it go from there. Let it play out, see what happens.
Right, exactly. And I'll be honest, my initial reaction was, could I write from the perspective of an animal and be like me personally, and be authentic? And I don't want to write like my cat because my cat's a pain in the ass, but I don't know. That does not make me right. It just makes me have limitations. So Dawn says, woof. You know what? Man, writing by it like your dog, that could be totally amazing. I don't know. It could just be mind blowing. Who knows? So, um, I think another question that I get, I haven't gotten this one in a little while, but how do I feel about writing from multiple points of view and also writing from different, like maybe using third person close and then like first person and possibly, now I'm clearly making this up, like second person, all within the same story.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Peter, how do you feel about that?
I like different points of view throughout a story because I want to see what each character is seeing through their eyes and through their description. Second person is always a challenge to pull off, and if that's done well, I'm really excited about that.
Hmm.
But yeah, when it varies between first and third person and close and distant, I mean, I find that interesting. It's exciting because you don't know what's coming next. And again, the caveat is if the writing's good, then you're following along and it's pulling you along with it, and that's just an added element of the story that is another fun aspect of it because they're all different points of view, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does, and I 100% agree. I prefer multiple points of view with, maybe in some cases different distances because it depends on what you are trying to accomplish or accomplishing
Right.
within the narrative itself, and what would add the most to the actual story. So, and to your point, it's you never really know what's going on. I mean, you never really know what's going on, but you have a much better view into what's going on when you do have those additional points of view because what one character sees may be nothing like what another character perceives. So,
Right.
I love complex narratives. So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
And also, you can
100%.
see what one character, the main character, the narrator, is saying and how they're presenting the story. And you got somebody else in completely different point of view who's observing the narrator and telling you stuff that you don't know, stuff that the
Right.
narrator doesn't want you to know. So
Right.
that's always interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to toss out a question that's like potentially too personal, so you can tell me to suck it if you're like no.
Get down, Buster.
All right. So, Peter, I know you have an MFA.
Hmm.
So this is a two-parter. Part one, why did you get an MFA? And part two, what what caused you to really kind of be focused on and passionate about storytelling?
That's a simple question, two-parter. Um, I'll answer the second question first. As far as storytelling goes, I've never been able to not write, if that makes sense. I've always had a pen, I've always had a notebook, whether it be poems or stories or whatnot. It's just something that I've always done since, since I was in third grade or something like that. It's just something that's always been a part of my life. And while the stories were not good for most of that time, it's just something I worked with and toyed with and was always active in. Um,
Mhm.
it's just an I don't talk much other than writing. I really don't talk very much. So the story writing is a way for me to get out what's going on within me, within my mind, within my heart, to get out how things are, how I'm perceiving things, which is always interesting. Sometimes leads to some nice discovery as well.
Mm.
Um, as far as the second part, that was kind of a weird kind of thing. I was at the Chicago Book Fair years ago, and I saw came across this program at University of Chicago. I picked up the flyer. I'm like, it's just a one night a week class at the grammar school of continuing study. And I'm like, I can get in this. I think I can apply for this. So I wrote a very terrible 80-page first couple chapters of a novel and was actually accepted in the program.
Mhm.
Um, and it turned out to be a fantastic, amazing workshop. It was a 2-year program. Learned a ton. And while I was in the program, the director of that program, Stephanie Friedman, was going to the Vermont College of Fine Arts.
Mhm.
So I'm like, well, that makes the most sense. If I'm going to continue learning about this, I want to keep learning. I'm going to go where the best are going to go. So I applied to get to the
Mhm.
University of Vermont College to VCFA, and I got in, and it was the best 2.5 years of my life. It's the most fun I've
Mhm.
ever had learning, and it didn't feel like work at all. I mean, writing, analyzing, creative theses, critical theses. It was just something that just hit home. And like, well, it's the true epitome of if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. It sounds trite,
Mm.
it sounds quaint, but looking back, that's exactly how it was. I mean, it was talking about writing, it was living writing, it was hearing writing, it was analyzing writing. It's
Mhm.
from poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction. It's just fantastic. Experimental poetry. I mean, it's just something that I'm really glad I did, and wouldn't trade it for the world.
And what's your favorite part of the overall process and why?
My favorite part?
Mhm.
I think the favorite part is like about a semester or two in, I really hit my stride,
Mm.
and the ghosts and the doubts and the fears kind of fell by the wayside because I had learned in the previous year and a half, how I wanted to tell a story. It just kind of gelled without really beating myself over the head with a book. It
Mhm.
kind of gelled how to tell a story, and it just kind of flowed from there. Then when I was writing my creative thesis, um, it just was a natural step to go into to use the stories that I was using writing during the program into the creative thesis. So I don't know if that makes total sense, but there
No,
was
it
just
does.
this, it's just this one time when you're skiing or whatever like that, you little start out a little rough at the beginning because you haven't skied in a while, but then about halfway down the mountain you just hit your groove, and from
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
you're not worried about falling, you're not worried about anybody else or anything else. You just hit your groove and it just flows. And sometimes I miss that feeling because it's very fleeting at times.
Mm. I
What about
understand
you?
that. Oh, what about me? Let's see. So the like you, I've been writing since I can remember. My father, he was a radio personality, and he'd also been a journalist. And I think even before I learned how to write a paragraph, he taught me how to write like a journalism structure,
Oh, cool.
and which
You're my
and
wine.
yeah, and it like AP style, and to the point where by the time I was in college, I had been writing it, so I like it was like writing a sentence, right? It just would, come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Drexel University for my undergraduate, and they have a big internship program, or we call it a co-op. So a few of the employers, part of the interview process was they would hand you like press copy or hand you some kind of copy and say, I want you to write a story based on this. So
Oh,
I just
cool.
went, yeah, okay, great. And I like knocked it out and I handed it over. And one woman, I think she must have thought I cheated somehow because she looked at me and was like, "You're done?" And I'm like, "Yeah, here you go." Right. So then she turned around and she handed me another press release and said, "Here, here's another one. Do this one." And I went, "Okay, here." Right. And then she was like, at that point, it was like, okay, there's no way I got a hold of like, like I think she had gave me like 3 press releases at the end of the day and was like, "Are you available, next week?" And I said, "Well, doesn't the co-op start in like, in a month or something like that?" And she was like, "Yeah, but I need help now." Like she was like totally underwater. And I now which sounds fabulous. It was a huge benefit for me to write, like and corporate writing and marketing and any kind of journalism copy, like newspaper copy.
Hmm.
Uh, it also taught me that everything has a different structure, if that makes sense. And that's what
Hmm.
kind of forced me to really pay attention to, like, a paragraph actually does have a defined structure, right?
Yep.
An essay has a defined structure. An AP style article has a defined structure. Every genre has a defined structure, including literature, which I think a lot of people don't realize, right? But literature
Right.
actually does have a clear structure. And once you master those structures, it makes writing the story 1,000 times easier because you can see it, or at least for me, right? Like I can
Hmm.
actually see it. And then, but it also enables you to play a lot more, right? Because once you
Exactly.
know what the baseline is, then you can just like kind of go everywhere. Um, and then in terms of an MFA, at the time I was working for a corporation, and I did exactly what you described, right? I attended tons of like writers groups that were affiliated with different universities, and I mean, guys that were considered the best of the best, who like they were, a lot of them were really by invitation, like not to sound snooty at all, like, it was just like, someone came up to me at a conference or at like a writer's workshop or whatever and said, you really need to take this class, here's the guy's email, let him know
Hmm.
I sent you. And I went, oh, okay, right. And me not knowing anything, right, just being completely clueless, I just
Right.
thought, yeah, sure, why not, right? And I learned so much in those side classes, like exactly what you described, both from fellow attendees as well as the instructors, and just as much from listening to people when you go out to the bar after and finding out, like, what were their greatest influences and what books did they love the most. And
Hmm.
I would run out and I would buy like all these like books that I'd never heard of before, and I would just devour them because typically whoever was talking about that story, there was a reason, right? There was something about the narrative that they learned from, right? There was
Hmm.
something about the way the storytelling was done. And that's also how I found out that I'm like a huge fan of National Book Award winners. Like, I must have the exact same taste as the National Book Award board, the judges, because I devour them like you would not believe. It's kind of ridiculous. And I read every genre basically. I
Hmm.
Well, not basically, I do. And because I just think there's always something fun, there's always something that you can have a blast with each genre.
Right.
Anyway, so back to the MFA thing. So I'd hit a point where I had been invited to, I did all these conferences and I took all these more local workshops and such, and I had had some people who suggested for a while, and I'd been to Breadloaf. Oh my god, I think I went to Breadloaf like 4 times. I went to Yale Writers Workshop like 3 times, 3 or 4. We actually published the former coordinator, the former the original director of the Yale Writers Workshop. It's so fun when you get tongue tied. Terry, Terry, he used to be the director for the Yale Writers Workshop. Anyway, and I uh, honestly, I already had an MBA. I didn't really want to go back to school because I was like, dude, like I've done this. I don't know, like, do I really want another master's degree? And then my employer was like, hey, look, I know this is going to sound unusual, but as long as it's a certified program, we'll pay for it. And I was like, what? Exactly. That was my reaction.
Sign me up.
I was like, wait, what? You'll do, huh? So I thought, okay, I wanted to do more of a low residency, right? Even though, there were some programs that I still dream. I think I romanticized in my head, that I like going to NYU to this day. Like I just think that would have been just amazing. So,
Mhm.
but I applied to a whole bunch. I applied to the national school, Antioch, Fairfield, which is where I went. I don't remember if I did Warren Wilson. I think I did apply to Warren Wilson. I did try NYU full well knowing I wasn't going to get in because everyone I knew who went to NYU, they were already not just multi-published, but like award winning and like, hugely known before their tushes even hit the chair when they went to NYU. So I was like, yeah, that's highly unlikely. So I got into the national school, which blew my mind. So that's a full-time MFA out of New York. And I got into the national school, I got into Antioch, and I got into Fairfield. And I knew some people who went to Antioch who said that it was, a great low residency. And then I actually visited the Fairfield program, and it was relatively new when I went. And I still remember I hung out with some of the students at the time, and one of them turned to me and said, um, "Not only are you going to get in, but you will pick this as the school for you to go to. I'll see you next year." And I just sort of stared at her for a minute. Like I was like, okay, that was weird. But then at the end of the day, it came down to there were a couple of professors there that I really wanted to work with. One of them was Da Chen, who I just thought was brilliant. I still think is brilliant. I know he's brilliant. And then um, it was close enough to me because it's Fairfield, Connecticut, that I could easily go to the low residencies. And it was almost more like to your point, it was like a holiday, right? Like I would
Mhm.
work one-on-one with my professors throughout the term because you would be assigned a professor to work with, again, focused on you and your writing. And then we would meet up. I think it's for 10 days, um, once a quarter. And I mean, it was fantastic. I met so many people there who I'm still in touch with. Actually, we've published a few of my professors from
Oh, cool.
Fairfield.
Hmm.
Yeah, they sent us. Now, just so everyone knows, like they sent us their work and asked if we would be interested, and I made sure all of our acquisition editors reviewed and agreed that this was something that it wasn't just like Lisa went, hey, we're publishing this. So I don't do that, although I know and fully acknowledge I could if I wanted to, but I just don't think that's cool. So anyway, and but yeah, I thought, yeah, sure, fine, why not? May as well. If my company's telling me that they're going to pay for it, then
Yeah,
I may as well take advantage of it. So uh,
definitely.
yeah, so that's how I went to I got my MFA. um oh, I was going to ask you, so what's your favorite genre?
Fiction is my favorite genre, but I love playing around with creative nonfiction as well. just because there's a lot more strictures, a lot more structure with creative nonfiction. You can't explore or play as much. You got to stay true to the story, to the subject. I mean, I was a reporter for a little while I was in Chicago, so I got the who, what, when, where, why stuff that you were talking about. Nowhere near the extent that you were doing it, but it was still interesting. But essays, I mean, I was invited to a website called Past 10.
Oh,
I think it's
cool.
.org or .com. I'm not sure what, but it's Past 10,
Mhm.
and it's writers writing like a 500-word essay or whatever on what was happening 10 years ago on that day,
Oh, cool.
kind of thing. So it's like it was real. I was asked to do it, so I did mine on something that right after I had lost my job and I was down in the dumps as Christmas was coming. It was like December 19th, and like, what in the hell am I gonna write? And what
Mhm.
came out was just, I mean, it was hard to write because I was not in a very good place at that time,
Mhm.
but it was still a great cathartic activity to do because it
Mhm.
dredged up the muck from that was um, still present and just got it out. Like I was saying before, to get stuff out of me, write it on the page and let the world kind of deal with it, if that makes sense.
No, it
But,
totally makes sense.
but fiction is, I like fiction because basically because fiction has to make sense.
Mhm.
That's kind of the challenge to me is you see, that's why foreshadowing is such a big thing because fiction has to go from one point to another for it to make sense for the reader to buy in and accept what's happening. I mean, life we
Mhm.
know is completely off. It just does what it wants to do. Cars crash, people fight, people die, whatever. But fiction has to make sense, and
Mhm.
for it to come to a point where I'm writing a story and getting those facts in line and still making the story go forward and still advancing the plot, still advancing the characters. I mean, it's just such a fun challenge, you
Mhm.
know? Just
Mhm.
something. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, I wrote my first book when I was in my late 20s,
Mm.
and it was just a challenge. I was living by myself, go to work every day, coming home watching TV. I'm like, this is fucking boring. Like, like, well, can I write a book? You know,
Mhm.
so I just sat down and started writing. About 6 months later, I had a novella length book that was absolute crap, but it was finished. It had a start. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. I enjoyed
Mhm.
writing it. It was a good plot. It's actually the first chapter that I used to get into the University of Chicago program.
Oh, cool.
Um, so it's just something that I kind of completely lost my train of thought. um,
Why you like different forms of writing?
right. The whole fiction making sense kind of thing. It's like have it be. I lost my train of thought. I got off on a tangent. Sorry about that.
I'm good. All good. Nope.
Okay.
No,
Um,
actually that's pretty cool.
yeah,
How you really enjoy creative nonfiction. Mhm.
I've got a couple essays that are published online. The past 10 one and a couple others. Um, oh, wait. But Dawn says, wait until I'm her age.
I
Cool.
actually had an instructor at University of Pennsylvania who pulled me aside and said, "You're gonna when you're 50 is when you're gonna hit your stride." And at the time, I think I was 28, and I thought, "Am I gonna be writing that long?" And he was right. Actually, he pretty much nailed it. But that's all good. I won't reveal Dawn's age. You guys are gonna have to go and look at the comments section to see how old she is. But I must admit, Dawn, I have not quite hit that age as of yet. So, um, oh, and Dawn says that is so true. I've done my best work after 50. Yeah, I don't. There's something about, especially when you've been writing, as Peter's described, for so long that it's almost like everything sort of starts to mesh around your late 40s, I want to say. And that's when stuff that, not that it didn't make sense, but
Mm-hmm.
now not only does it make sense, but you can churn it out in a way that you just previously it was, like hunting and pecking and trying to figure out, like, well, what does this mean and what do I want it to mean and why
Right.
did I write that sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not nearly as laborious. Not that it's not a lot of work, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fun to the the pell mell approach because I mean, for years I wrote 1,000 words a night. That was my minimum. Scott Fitzgerald had that minimum, so I had that
Wow.
minimum. And so 1,000 words a night. And it was so much easier because I didn't know any of the rules. So
Right.
it's just what I wanted to put on the page is what I put on the page, And going back and editing and revising is like, okay, well, this needs to be cleaned up a lot.
Mhm,
But when you're first starting out writing, it's supposed to be crap. It's supposed to be bad because that's where you start out. That's where you learn from.
mhm,
So I'm just glad that I started out that way. I haven't gotten 1,000 words a night. I haven't had 1,000 word night for a while now, but
mhm,
I attribute that to knowledge, lack of time, and knowledge. Because with my editing and with the writing I've done, I'm not saying I'm any different than any other writer, but I take a lot more things into consideration, a lot more factors when I'm putting the
mhm.
words down. So before I'd be typing like crazy, sentence, paragraph, chapter. Now it's like now I'm hunting and pecking, going, okay, how is this character going to react to this on page 53? I'm like, Pete,
Mm.
I'm on page 4. Okay, let's let page 53 take care of itself.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a little bit slower these days, but the quality hopefully is up, and it's still fun. I'm still doing it. I have to do it every night. Just one of those things that I can't not do. I don't want to. I don't want to stop. I got asked this question when I was giving talking at a MFA program a couple months ago. I was like, I just can't not do it. I mean,
Right.
a pen will find my hand. I'll find a pen. I'll find a piece of paper, and just start scribbling something just to see what I can do. It's just something that just has never left, and I never wanted to. I want to see
Yeah,
where I can go with this.
I was gonna say, I mean, I admire you. 1,000 words, that's huge. 1,000 words a day.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to have really labor intensive day jobs where I'm minimally there is no such thing as an 8-hour day. I can't remember the last time I've had an 8-hour day. It's
Right.
always at least 9 to 11 hours a day.
Whoa.
Um, but then at night, like during the weekday at least, I'll focus on uh unless I have a deadline to have a draft done, I'll
Mm-hmm.
focus on research, reading, um, something that's really kind of building the baseline or building the essence of whatever that story is going to be.
Right.
And then I can usually knock out Monday through Friday between 400 and like 1,200 words at night.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
and then on the weekends, I set a target of 2,000 to 4,500 words a day on Saturday, and then on Sunday, because I can write. I don't want to say it's like 6 hours solid. It's like I'll like write, and then I need to take a break. Like my brain says, okay, we need to reset for a minute. Go get coffee. Or go check email or go take a phone call, something like that. And then I can go back and, start again. Uh so yeah, so like right now I'm knocking out the follow-up to Cure, and I'm doing exactly what I just described. And sometimes to your point, right? Like because I'll do an outline, a super high level outline, guys. I'm not talking Tom Clancy type of outline where I can have, bring in writers who write similarly and say, here's the outline, have at it. Um, but I'll do a really super high level outline, and then as I'm writing it, I mean, I know why I'm having these characters do this at this point and from a,
Mm-hmm.
a story arc perspective, but I
Right.
might get there and realize, oh, there's a much better way to do this, what I want to accomplish. And then I end up needing to go back and do some research so that, it's still true to the characters, it's still true to the story. And then I'll write that out, and then I have to adjust the
Mm-hmm.
subsequent high level bullets of the
Right.
actual outlines so that you know, it still works. So,
Well, yeah, when the story starts breathing on its own, that's when you start discovering things in it and have to shape the story to fit itself because it becomes its own kind of thing after a little while.
right.
You know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's just a fantastic feeling is having the story tell you or your mind actually key into it, and all you're doing is just transfer the thoughts, just transferring the thoughts.
Absolutely. I actually had a hilarious voicemail today. So someone I grew up with, I've known her since, according to our parents, I've known her since I was 2 and she was 6 months old. But what we remember, I think I was 6 and she was 4 or something like that. Anyway, we've been, so we're like basically like sisters because we've literally known each other that long. And so she picked up Cure and she left me this voicemail and she was like, "Oh my God, I just finished the chapter with the first sex scene and I was completely terrified. I'm about to read my sister's idea of what sex is." Like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Like, can I skip this? Is this it? Like, do I have to read this to read the story? And I'm just like sitting there cracking up, like listening to this voicemail. And she was like, "All right, you did it well. Kudos." So to get that from, in essence, your sister, that's pretty high high marks, guys. So anyway,
Definitely.
right?
Hmm.
Um, so Don says, ever try checking those plot generator websites? They're basically useless but hilarious. I don't know. Have you checked those things out?
No, and Poets and Writers has those writing prompts for fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry, and I don't even I that's not how I want to get an idea. Well, backtrack that. That's not how I want to approach a story. Is from an experimental point of view. That's just not what I'm into. And if that's shutting down a creative avenue, that's my bad. But yes, I mean I've got several projects going on that fortunately the lack of ideas isn't the problem right now. So
There, that's awesome.
it's I'm very fortunate in that respect. Yeah,
I,
when
I
go ahead.
I've never checked those out either. But I do have there's a book that's like the 20 uh uh the 20 most common story arcs or something like that, or plots. I think it's
Hmm.
the 20 most common plots. I have that just because, like, if you're having a challenge developing an overarching arc for a story, that's a great way to just kind of brainstorm out, like kind of go through it. Like, what do I kind of want this to be similar to? And then use that as a baseline and then develop your own plot line.
Right.
Um, and I admit, I have used like Wikipedia for, um, like I wanted to write a mystery, and there is so like mysteries, romance, I want to say thrillers. There are a few other genres that it's the same arc every time. It's the same structure every time.
Hmm.
So I might I might go to Wikipedia, look up what that story arc is, right? What's that basic structure? And then I use that to help me form the overall structure of the the work, whether it's a short story or a novel or whatever.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway.
I was actually fortunate enough to actually attend a lecture by Kurt Vonnegut Jr.
Oh
back
wow.
15 years ago. It was fantastic. I was in this. I know exactly. I was in the third row here, just off to the right. He's standing up there, larger than life,
Wow.
smelling like cigarette smoke. But uh, he laid out I think the 5 different story arcs or the 7 different story arcs, and
Mhm.
just wrote them out on the chalkboard right behind him. And like, yeah, that book falls into that one. That one falls into that one. He just breaks it down. So if you're ever curious about plot lines or plot structures, check out Kurt Vonnegut. I mean, he's a great teacher and he's a great writer.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So Don gave an example of what we can find on that plot generator. A con artist with allergies and a priest who loves owls travel to Egypt, where a naked dead body falls through a ceiling on a Tuesday.
Got to be Tuesday.
It's got to be a Tuesday. Anything else, it just won't work.
Wow, that's out there.
Right? I honestly, I was like, I could probably make it work until we got to the Tuesday thing. And I'm like, there's no purpose to that. I'm like, I get the allergy thing. I get the complexity with having someone who loves owls. Well, I'm assuming there's going to be an owl with them, but And the naked dead body. I don't know. Anyway, never mind. See, this is how I try to make things work. Unfortunately, Peter gets to experience this on a regular basis. So,
No, this thing is gonna stick with me. Me in the middle, random. Like, wait a second, I could do that.
right? I
Yeah.
could figure this out. I could
Mhm.
make this work. It sounds completely asinine, but I could make it.
Absurd is a story genre, so.
That's true. It absolutely is a story genre. So
Um,
anyway, go ahead.
I just remember something. I was in New York with Kathy a couple years ago. We stopped in this bar, some bar anywhere. I don't remember exactly where it was, but they had a machine set up where you put in like, I think it was put in a dime, you get a 50-word short story. You put in a quarter, you get a 100-word short story. You put in a dollar, you get a 200-word short story. But it's just this machine. It just cranks them out, just prints them out. I'm sure the artists could contribute their works to it, probably for free. But it's a really neat machine. I've never seen that anywhere else. So if
Hmm,
you ever find that bar, I mean, let me know what the name of it is because I want to go back.
okay. I think I remember this machine. Don't
Yeah,
you put in like names or something and then it churns out like a random story?
maybe,
Or
maybe. I don't remember that clearly, but
yeah,
it's just
that sounds cool.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, guys, you only have us for 9 more minutes. So if you have any questions, don't forget, go ahead, pop it into the comments section, and then Peter and I will be more than happy to respond to whatever your questions are. If you guys are watching this and it is not live, this isn't a big deal. All you got to do is go ahead, pop your questions in the comments section. I always go back, I always check for any kind of comments and questions, and we will be more than happy to address those comments or questions first thing in our next session. And also, don't forget, we are here on Thursdays between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern time. Susie Vitello Sule is the press planning to attend the next AWP conference in Seattle? Um, Not right now. In previous years, they made it to be honest, they made it a little bit easier to attend the writers conference, and we've actually had panels at AWP. We had one. I think we had one in when it was in Philadelphia, and I believe we had a panel. Uh, Now I don't remember, but we've had a couple, and we actually hosted some events that were a whole lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
But we don't have plans to attend the next AWP conference. So um, that said, I mean, if we get an opportunity to do so, I mean, as long as it's associated with some kind of a panel or an event or something like that afterwards, like I'm all for it. So Caroline asks, any plans to come east to conferences? I actually am going to be attending the next StokerCon, which is the Horror Writers Association conference in Pittsburgh. I believe it's in June. I am typically invited to the Pen Writers Conference, which is either outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, depending on the year. Um, I was at the Atlanta Writers Conference this past year, and I'm trying to there. I think there was another writers conference that I was invited to for 2023, but I honestly I don't remember right now. How about you, Peter?
Um, Not at this time. No, just not in the books right now.
That said, Caroline, if you have any ideas for conferences for us to attend, just shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy for us to look into possibly coming out and speaking at those conferences. So, Cindy, Vegas Hospitor, and by the way, guys, I apologize if I'm like completely botching your names. You can just shoot me later. Penn Writers 2023 will be in Pittsburgh. Absolutely, yes. Unfortunately, Penn Writers 2023, it will be in Pittsburgh, and I'm actually gonna. It's at the same time as StokerCon, so I won't be able to attend it in 2023. So sorry. But yeah, if you guys have any ideas or thoughts or uh, even like book fairs, things like that, more than happy. Would absolutely love for either for us to come out or to have some of our authors come out. Because I mean, who really wants to hear us talk unless you're a book nerd or you're a writer, right? I think you really want to hear our authors talking about all the fantastic stories that they've written. So,
Mm.
anyway, and with that, it is you guys have us for 5 more whole minutes. That's like nothing. If I were you, I'd take advantage of it. Come up with something. I don't know. Anything you can come up with anything actually.
I got a question for you. Do
Mhm.
you keep up on the Pulitzers from year to year?
I don't believe it or not. I
Really?
used to. Yeah. How about you?
I do. I try to see what comes out. The stories have been getting more complex and
Mm,
more what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just gonna go with complex. Like with
that's cool.
Jennifer Egan when she did Visit from the Goon Squad,
Oh yeah, I love
there
that.
was all those chapters in different forms and whatnot. And then there was one I think it was the Equalizer a couple years ago. That's just so much detail, so much information, so much cool fiction storytelling going on. It just pulls me in and just completely I lose my track of whatever else is going on because I'm reading the book,
Hmm.
and just fully immersed in the story going what's going on in the story. Um, I also like to read the runners up as well to see why they chose this one over that one, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I'm curious to see what's out there and what's at the top of the literary critics lists, kind of thing.
Got it. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. So the winner. Now, do you read, because they have the journalism category and then they have, books.
Yeah, I
Do
stick with
you
the fiction ones.
you stick with the fiction? Okay.
Hmm.
Just curious.
Yeah, there's some that are amazing. Like All the Light You Cannot See is phenomenal. Um,
Oh, gotcha.
Brief
Agreed.
Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, The Road. I mean, some of the picks are fantastic.
Yeah, The Road was phenomenal.
Mm.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm a big fan of Cormac McCarthy and Kent Harif as well, who passed on a couple years ago.
Mm,
But their lack of detail tells so much. It's amazing.
mm-hmm. Well, and it's where you're placing the detail, right? Because that helps in terms of focus the actual story itself.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because I know you and I recently had this conversation with an author or with some of our authors around like, well, you don't want to just have detail for detail. You want to have detail so that it's actually making the story. It's making it alive, right? It's complementing um, the narrative itself, and it's really bringing forward the world that you're writing. Caroline says, "Great to see you both. Just read it. Brilliant, Peter." uh, but yeah, so anyway, because sometimes authors get really into the worlds that they're writing and they get lost in the world, but they forget why they're providing this detail, why they're providing information, and it ends up pulling you out of the story instead of pulling you in.
Exactly,
So
because you start questioning is why is the author telling me about an ashtray when there's a car accident going on over here? Kind of thing.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
stick with the details and description that's pertinent to the story that, like you said, carries it forward and
Hmm.
also shines light on the world, like you said. Because
Hmm.
every story, every image should mean something, you know.
Hmm. Oh, Caroline says, "All the light you cannot see." Yeah, it was
Whew,
brilliant.
that's a
Agreed.
brilliant book.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. I actually, right now, I have so many stacks of books on my bedside that I try to read at least a half hour per night. And, but I try to do a combination of stuff.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's more fun that way. So, anyway,
for sure.
well, awesome. Well, we are just about at time. So with that, Peter, as always, it's a blast. Looking forward to next week as well. And thank you to Dawn and Caroline and everybody who came and asked us questions. And again, guys, if you're watching this and it's the recording, just go ahead, toss your comments, toss your questions in the comment section, and we'll be more than thrilled to reply.
Yeah.
So see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a great one.